Okay, Happy New Year, everybody. I was trying to get all of this testing completed by the end of December. Didn't happen, but that's okay. There's some interesting developments that it took me a minute to get this last bit of information out to you. And I say last, it's really not the last. There's more to come, and I'll save that for later. What I'm specifically talking about is our undervolting VID lock. How does that perform? Is it stable? Do I recommend that? When I'm pairing it with other products to try to keep these 14th gen CPUs cool. And we've got some very interesting information. I've had to do a lot of testing. It's been interesting. So I want to go ahead and get right into this. And I left where a mistake was made so that you would see what I was working with and how things went. So without further ado, let's go take a peek at some data. Okay, I want to present this VID locking and undervolting data for this project. I again need to specify, please do this at your own peril. I think this works, but then again, I don't know 100%. I think this is safe. I took some information from others that are promoting this information, similar types of information on this, the Gigabyte motherboards, and I had to do some work to try to figure out what the right settings were for the ASRock. So please do this at your own risk, and please use my information as sort of a guide. But there was more testing. So after the preliminary data that I found a better performance, reduced voltage, locking the VID, doing a small undervolt, I ended up wanting to look at other tests that I used and compare them. The test that I used was run in a similar fashion as the other tests. But the 4 that I used gave me scores because I'm also looking at performance as well as temperatures. So performance test, the CPU test, just like before. Intel Extreme Tuning Utility, I didn't use it for an overclock. It was just to run the benchmark and look at the heat. And then the Cinebench R1, R23, R24, and the 10-minute throttling test to see how well we did in terms of heat generation and the scores we got. And the data that I collected and really focused on, I collected a lot more data with the first runs and looking at the heat generation. Pardon me there. So this time around, I'm really just looking for CPU temps, VID numbers, watts, and the score of the test. Just looking to just sort of a snapshot of the settings and how I expect it to perform moving forward. So here are the tests that I recreated using the test bench. Again, I have extensive videos already on how I set this test up, what my methodology was, what the test rig really consists of. I don't really want to go through that and make this a very long video. But I used test 29, 30, 32, 33, 43, and 45. You can see I included some thermal paste and liquid metal options as well. You know, my previous statement about thermal paste doesn't work as well as liquid metal and proved it. Nonetheless, I wanted to actually get a comparison here as well and see what kind of difference it was. And I used not all the same block. I wanted to switch it up a little bit. AlphaCool Core 1, Optimus Signature V3, Iceman Direct Eye Cooler, and the Thermal Grizzly. These were very well performing blocks. So really, there were pros and cons to all of these, and that was discussed in my products video. Please refer back to those at your leisure. But here was sort of the setups that I used from my last example of doing the VID lock and the undervolt. That still is the same setup on my ASRock Lightning. So you'll see that the average temps actually dropped by doing with the new load line calibration, comparing it with just OEM settings. OEM settings means load optimized defaults and then set XMP profile for the memory. That's all the OEM settings were. And then I did the the offset voltage, the load line calibration changes, the VID lock, and then I compare the two runs. You can see here that temps across the board changed and were reduced by doing the load line calibration and your voltage reduction. The VID obviously was lower by doing this, and the wattage was a little lower, but not at all in every instance. But what is going on right there? Like, we got a drop in performance across the board, and that's not what I expected at all. That's not what I got from my preliminary data. Looking at that single test, if you remember, I was very encouraged by an actual performance improvement. So what happened? Where did I mess up? Did I mess up? Was my initial information wrong and I needed to get a correction video out to you guys? Like, don't do this. I was wrong. As it turns out, I had used auto settings for the load line calibration and saw that on that initial run it got similar numbers with my ASRock board to setting it to 0.4. Well, with use, it likes to get smart, and it actually changed it. It was set to auto, so it changed it, and that's why my scores dropped. I don't know if it was good to change it, but it wasn't necessarily unstable. But you can see my performance took a hit. So what I decided is that I am looking at information that is on one system, and I'm showing my results like this is what you can expect, and maybe that isn't consistent across the board. I'm looking at one board with, it's new products. But what happens if you do this on other systems and just try to run it like you would normally set up a system and run it? So as you can see, I have built recently several systems, and it makes me look like an Intel fanboy, but this tells you how invested I am in terms of trying to find cool solutions for longevity of this product, because I like it. I like the process. I like the power. I like how it runs. I just want to be able to keep it and it running great. So you're starting to see why I was so invested in trying to find the best options for this. So I've codenamed some systems. Test 1 and 2 is what I call pH, and I'll probably refer to it as the penthouse. I have another place that I've created for myself, not to get away from the family. It's just I wanted a place for some other toys. So my squat rack, my drum set, another theater system is above my workshop, and that's where I built this other computer, and I call it the penthouse system. So it's got an i9-14900k as well, but I didn't delid that CPU. It is on a gigabyte board, and so I basically am just running the Thermal Grizzly contact frame with Thermal Grizzly paste, and even dropped and used that Coolants 380i. I want to use some of the other coolers, but I'm sort of saving them for other comparisons if I need them. I don't want to keep tearing computers apart. And then I did the VidLock load line calibration on that system. And then test 3 and 4 is the test bench that we all know and love that I've been using for all of this data for this delidded i9-14900k. It's the ASRock Phantom Gaming Lightning Wi-Fi board. It's a full ATX board. And then I did the same. I optimized defaults with XMP profile as OEM. And then I set the load line calibration not on auto, but on 0.4, and specified it and locked it in instead of leaving it at auto. I think that is why I had a performance drop. And on this situation, I used the Thermal Grizzly heat spreader, liquid metal, and the AlphaCool Core 1. And that's how it sits right now. The test 5 and 6 was I made a sim rig for driving simulator. And that has an i9-14900ks. Also on a gigabyte board. It has, the last two have video cards. But it is not a delidded processor. But again, it's thermal paste, Thermal Grizzly contact frame, and this was a Heat Killer 4 Pro. I did not include the Heat Killer 4 Pro in all of my testing. I did plenty of testing, but when DeBauer evaluated a big water block lineup, the Heat Killer 4 Pro came in a close second to the AlphaCool Core 1, and I just included the Core 1. So the sim rig right now is using the Heat Killer 4 Pro. We'll see how that does. And then finally, I hated to, but I'm starting to use the office rig for some of these testing as well. And this was the build that I really wanted to make sure I put the best products in. This has my 14900KS with the Gigabyte Master X. It has a 3080 Founders Edition, which I'm hopeful that I can get my hands on something a little newer, but really this card really works great. That's another time. And then the same load line vid lock calibrations, but the KSs I locked at 1450 or 1.45, where the Ks I locked at 1400. I don't know really the best numbers to use for the KS. I know you keep locking them lower and lower and you'll lose your boosting option for the 6.2. So I left it 1.45 and hoping that it would be able to handle that additional stress. This was delidded. If you go back and look at my videos, I delidded that CPU. That is the one that I showcased delidding and talking about my experiences. So what I did was I put it back together with the Thermal Grizzly heat spreader, liquid metal underneath, but thermal paste on top between the heat spreader and the Optimus Signature V3. Okay, so I use these systems, not just one system. And again, they're not designed to be compared against each other, just what are the outcomes of using these systems, and is the data repeatable with the load line calibration, vid lock, and such. So looking at the Penthouse 900K gigabyte system, you have, back to what I would expect, you have a drop in temp, an increase in score, a drop in your vid, and about the same wattage. So that's, I don't know what would be considered a wash at this point, but there was a higher wattage used. But despite the higher wattage, you had the locked vid still hit my boost and still drop my temps. Because of that, my score went up. So I think this is a success. And you can see the average scores and vids and watts of all of the 4 tests between the 2 different configurations of this system. Then you get down to the test bench, and where I was getting a drop in performance, I didn't see the drop in performance now. So I did get a almost 17% drop in my temps, a 1.1% increase in my score, a drop in my vids, because it's locked, obviously, and a drop in the wattage needed to get that performance improvement. And then I get to the 2 KS systems, and this was the Heat Killer 4 Pro. There wasn't the temp difference seen. It was about a wash. The score, however, was still improvement. A drop in the vid as expected and a drop in the wattage needed for these numbers. So overall, that's a plus. The office rig with the delidded KS showed a drop in temps of 16% and a increase in the score, although not as great as some of the others, but a drop in the vids and the wattage needed. Now these KS CPUs, I'm still trying to study them and learn them. There's still an increase in wattage and power draw because of the 6.2 gigahertz boost instead of the 6 gigahertz boost from the K. So it does, I think another individual said there was a 30% increase in utilization to get that 6.2 gigahertz in terms of wattage required. So these are very power hungry systems, and yet this is using a relatively good setup, although still using thermal paste between the heat spreader and the block, and I still saw a 16% drop in performance. So a couple of things I want to point out is that maybe I didn't see as good of a result in the sim rig because the hardware that was used still matters. So if you look at the Core 1 setup and using liquid metal, look at the temp difference. If you look at the sim rig, OEM, non-delidded, using paste, using a block that doesn't perform as well as the others that I initially tested, you don't see such a temp difference. But maybe you guys are okay with those temps. I'm not, but you guys make your own decisions. But looking at even the coolants block, there wasn't as much of a temp drop. That block is old, it's outdated, still hung in there. I'm still impressed with it, but it's just not up to par. It's not on par with the Optimus Signature V3, your Core 1, your Iceman Direct Die, and obviously the top performer of my test thus far, the Thermal Grizzly Direct Die. So I think that helps to explain some of those numbers, but I think overall, as you're just looking at these systems, I didn't shut everything down. I just booted them up. Hardware info was running in the background. Excel sheet was running. Things were running, and I ran these tests. So it was, how do you use them every day? And will you actually be able to see a difference? And will they be stable? And will they work well? There's your numbers. I'm pretty comfortable that, and after the test, I reset everything to making sure that the vid lock and load line calibration was set. And that's how they're all sitting right now. So choose wisely. The hardware still matters. Choose what you like, what you can afford. So there is a price comparison there. We've gone through this, but just get quality hardware, and then use what you consider is a good UnderVolting vid lock. If you want to use something a little different, please have at it. This is enthusiast builds. This is what we do, right? And hopefully these will last. And I will, by default, be testing this because as I started this whole thing, my last system was in, when was the Sandy Bridge? i9-14900k, overclocked. I mean, that's what I was using until the water pump went out on my coolants, external water pump. And that's what prompted all of this. So I'll be hanging in there. Maybe I'll have other products to review in terms of other CPUs and other motherboards. That's yet to be determined. But there is more on the horizon. So there you have it. It's been an interesting journey, and it's taken me a lot of time, a lot of energy, and I'm not complaining about that. It's actually been really rewarding. I've reached out to a couple companies, and I've had some interest shared back in terms of obtaining additional products to test for these 14th gen devices. So I would like to say that this concludes all of the testing, but if this works out, if we can work out some of the details, there's more products to be added to this particular test bench setup and how it will compare. So that's why I haven't changed some of my other systems around. That's why I've kept some other blocks sort of in waiting in case I have to do some repeat testing. I don't want to have to keep tearing out other computers. So this has been a lot of fun, but it has been quite a bit of money. So I really appreciate if you support the channel as best you can. There's affiliate links. I hate these shameless plugs, but at the end of the day, I've gotten a lot out of it. I hope you have too. I appreciate the followers that I have and the growth of the channel thus far. Thank you so much for those who are tuning in. And there actually is more to come. I've got some graphic card developments on the way, and hopefully more CPU coolers to do here. But I think what I've tried to accomplish, I did. I found a very well performing CPU that had some issues with cooling and degradation, and we found what in my opinion are the best products to use from a mechanical standpoint to drive heat away. And then we also found a way to undervolt, VID lock, and actually maintain performance, if not improve it a little bit, and hopefully prevent future degradation, because I will be keeping these systems running for quite some time. I built a system to have it stick around. So please leave a comment down below and continue to follow. Thank you guys. I appreciate you. Happy New Year. God bless.